The cold winds of Nova Prime whistled across the barren landscape, carrying whispers of destruction. Hannah Park stood at the observation deck, her small frame pressed against the reinforced glass, watching the endless horizon. Behind her, the last human colony hummed with nervous energy. The Kralzar was coming. Everyone knew it. The massive alien creature had already consumed 12 planetary settlements, leaving nothing but scorched earth and broken dreams. Its reputation preceded it like a dark prophecy, a beast so terrifying that entire military battalions would surrender without a fight. Hannah was different. Where others saw hopelessness, she saw patterns. Her 12-year-old mind worked like a complex computer, analyzing every recorded transmission, every fragmented video of the creature's previous attacks. Her parents, Jay and Yuri Park, were senior military strategists who had long since lost hope. But Hannah's determination burned bright. The colony's defense systems were minimal. Massive electromagnetic shields flickered intermittently, a sad reminder of humanity's dwindling technological capabilities. Refugee ships from destroyed settlements lined the landing zones, each vessel carrying survivors with hollow eyes and broken spirits. Commander Park, no relation to Hannah, reviewed the latest reconnaissance data. Satellite images showed the Kralzar, approaching from the western quadrant, its biomechanical body stretching nearly 3 kilometers in length. It moved like a living storm, consuming everything in its path. Metallic structures, organic matter, entire landscapes simply disappeared into its massive form. Hannah listened carefully as the military leaders discussed evacuation strategies. Their voices were low, defeated. They spoke of a final stand, of buying time for the remaining civilian transports to escape. But Hannah knew something they didn't. She had been studying the creature's movement patterns, its energy signatures, its biological responses. The colony's technology was primitive compared to the Kralzar. Where human engineers had created complex but fragile systems, the alien beast represented a perfect fusion of organic adaptation and mechanical precision. It could heal itself, transform its external structure, and absorb technological systems like a living computer. Outside, the first warning sirens began to wail. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in a harsh glow. Children were being shepherded into underground shelters, families clutching minimal possessions. The atmosphere was thick with fear, with the understanding that this might be humanity's final moment on Nova Prime. Hannah's research notebook was filled with hundreds of sketches, mathematical calculations, and observed anomalies about the Kralzar. While adult scientists had approached the creature with traditional combat strategies, she saw something different. She saw vulnerabilities hidden within its seemingly invincible structure. Her father walked past, his military uniform pressed, but his eyes weary. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture more of farewell than comfort. "Stay in the shelter," he whispered. But Hannah knew she would do no such thing. The ground began to tremble. Massive seismic readings indicated the Kralzar's approach. Defensive cannons mounted on the colony's perimeter started charging, a futile gesture against a creature that had consumed entire planetary defense systems. In the research laboratory, Hannah had been preparing something. Small devices carefully constructed from salvaged communication equipment and experimental energy modulators. Her designs looked almost childlike in their simplicity, yet beneath their unassuming appearance lay a complex understanding of quantum interference and biological energy systems. Commander Park was discussing final evacuation protocols when Hannah entered the command center. Her sudden appearance startled the seasoned military personnel. She carried a datapad filled with her research, her eyes burning with an intensity that seemed out of place for a child. "I know how to stop it," she said simply. The room fell silent. Dozens of experienced military officers stared at the young girl, some with mild amusement, others with a desperate hope flickering in their eyes. Outside, the first glimpse of the Kralzar became visible, a massive undulating form that seemed to absorb light itself. Mechanical tentacles extended from its central mass, scanning the environment with cold, calculated precision. Humanity's last colony on Nova Prime was about to face its ultimate test. And at the center of this potential apocalypse stood a young girl, armed with nothing more than her intellect, her research, and an unshakable belief that human innovation could triumph over seemingly insurmountable odds. The Kralzar was coming, and Hana Park was ready. The research center was a maze of flickering screens and abandoned workstations. Hana's presentation began with a calm certainty that seemed out of place among the tired, defeated scientists and military personnel. Her holographic display came to life, revealing intricate patterns that most had overlooked. Commander Kwan watched, her with a mixture of skepticism and tired curiosity. The Kralzar had destroyed everything they had built, crushed their most advanced defense systems, and reduced entire planetary networks to silent memories. What could a 12-year-old possibly know? Hana's fingers danced across the holographic interface. Complex biological diagrams appeared, showing the creature's internal structure. She had mapped something extraordinary, a series of interconnected energy points that seemed to control the Kralzar's adaptive capabilities. "The creature isn't invincible," she explained, her voice steady. "It has a fundamental weakness in its quantum communication network." The room was silent. Some of the older scientists exchanged knowing glances. A child talking about quantum networks. It seemed ridiculous. But there was something in her eyes, a clarity that demanded attention. She zoomed in on a specific section of the alien's biomechanical structure. Intricate lines showed energy flow, revealing subtle vulnerabilities that previous research had completely missed. Each movement of her hand peeled back another layer of the creature's complex design. Dr. Park, a senior xenobiologist, leaned closer. What she was seeing challenged everything they understood about the Kralzar. The creature's adaptive systems, once thought to be perfect, suddenly looked like a complex machine with hidden fault lines. Hana continued her presentation. She explained how the Kralzar's ability to absorb and adapt to technological systems created a unique weakness. Its very strength was also its potential downfall. The more complex its adaptive systems became, the more vulnerable it was to precise, targeted interventions. Commander Kwan's expression changed. The tired resignation in his eyes was replaced by a spark of something else. Hope, perhaps, or simply curiosity. "Explain further," he demanded. She showed them a series of calculated frequencies. Mathematical equations danced across the screen, demonstrating how specific electromagnetic and acoustic signals could potentially disrupt the creature's communication network. It was like finding a secret language within an alien code. The research center had been a place of defeat. Countless scientists had tried and failed to understand the Kralzar. Entire research teams had been consumed, their knowledge lost forever. But here was a young girl presenting a potential solution that no one had considered. "The Kralzar communicates internally through quantum entanglement," Hana explained. "But this system has limitations. If we can introduce a specific interference pattern, we might be able to create a cascading failure in its adaptive systems." Dr. Park began to calculate. Her fingers moved quickly across her own display, verifying Hana's findings. Minutes passed. The room held its breath, then a sharp intake of breath confirmation. "She's right," Dr. Park said, her voice barely a whisper. Commander Kwan approached Hana. He towered over her, his weathered face a map of countless battles. "And how do you propose we implement this strategy?" he asked. Hana smiled. It was a small smile, but it held the promise of something extraordinary. She began to outline a plan that was both simple and incredibly complex, a strategy that would require precision, timing, and a complete reimagining of their defensive capabilities. The scientists began to move, computers hummed to life. Research that had been abandoned suddenly found new purpose. Hana stood at the center of it all, a calm presence in a storm of renewed activity. Outside, the Kralzar continued its approach, massive and seemingly unstoppable. But inside the research center, something was changing. A strategy was forming. A possibility was taking shape. Humanity's last hope rested on the shoulders of a young girl who saw what others could not. The unlikely genius had found a way where everyone else had failed. The battle was about to begin. The underground laboratory buzzed with frantic energy. Hana stood at the center, surrounded by a small team of engineers and scientists who had abandoned all previous strategies. Their new mission was impossible, but it was their only hope. Specialized equipment covered every available surface. Electromagnetic pulse generators looked like complex metal sculptures. Custom acoustic disruptors resembled delicate musical instruments designed by an alien civilization. Chemical compounds in transparent containers glowed with an unnatural light. Dr. Lee, a veteran engineer with burned hands and tired eyes, carefully calibrated the first prototype. "These devices must be precise," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. 1 millimeter of error means total failure. Hana watched carefully. Her small hands occasionally pointed out minute adjustments, corrections that seasoned professionals had overlooked. The team had initially been skeptical, but her consistent accuracy had won their respect. The colony's remaining resources were being channeled into this single desperate plan. Every power generator, every remaining communication satellite, every last piece of advanced technology was being repurposed. They were building a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. Outside, scout drones tracked the Kralzar's approach. The creature moved like a living storm, consuming everything in its path. Entire landscapes disappeared beneath its massive form. Metallic structures and organic matter alike were absorbed into its incredible biomechanical body. "We have approximately 16 hours, Commander Kwan announced, studying the holographic tracking map. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the underlying tension. 16 hours to prepare a defense that could potentially save the last human colony. Hana's design focused on the creature's quantum communication network. Traditional weapons had failed. Military strategies had collapsed. But her approach was different. She wanted to speak the creature's own language to introduce a fatal contradiction into its adaptive systems. The acoustic disruptors were her most innovative creation. They weren't designed to destroy, but to confuse, like a complex musical instrument playing a melody that would unravel the creature's internal communication protocols. Dr. Park worked on chemical compounds that could penetrate the Kralzar's adaptive armor. Each solution was a delicate balance of molecular structures designed to interfere with the creature's regenerative capabilities. "This is madness," one of the younger engineers whispered. But madness was all they had left. Hana moved between workstations, her presence a calm center in the storm of preparation. She understood something the others were just beginning to realize. This wasn't just about survival. This was about proving humanity's most powerful weapon: intelligence. The electromagnetic pulse generators were carefully constructed to deliver a precise multi-layered attack. Each device was programmed with complex algorithms that would adapt in real time to the Kralzar's potential responses. Backup systems were prepared. Redundant communication networks were established. Every possible scenario was calculated and recalculated. Failure was not an option. As night fell over the colony, the preparation continued. Exhausted scientists worked in shifts. Computer screens displayed complex mathematical equations and biological diagrams. The air was thick with tension and possibility. Commander Kwan reviewed the final preparations. His experienced military mind saw both the brilliance and the incredible risk of Hana's strategy. It was a plan so unusual, so unexpected, that it might actually work. The last pieces of equipment were calibrated, protective barriers were reinforced, communication protocols were established. Everything depended on perfect timing and absolute precision. Outside, the first warning systems began to sound. The Kralzar was close, very close. Hana looked out through a small observation window. The massive creature was approaching, consuming the landscape. But this time humanity was ready. This time they had a plan. "We're prepared," she said quietly. The team around her stopped, looked at her. In that moment, they believed her. The impossible was about to become possible. The final countdown had begun. The ground trembled. Massive seismic waves announced the Kralzar's approach long before it became visible. Colony defense systems activated, their energy shields flickering with desperate hope. Hana stood in the central command center, her small frame surrounded by massive computer screens and anxious military personnel. Her fingers hovered above the activation sequence, waiting for the precise moment. The creature emerged from the horizon like a living nightmare. 3 kilometers of biomechanical horror, it moved with impossible grace. Mechanical tentacles extended, scanning the environment. Massive energy signatures indicated its preparation to consume everything in its path. Commander Quan watched the holographic displays. Years of military experience told him they were about to witness either humanity's greatest triumph or most complete destruction. Now, Hana whispered. The first wave of acoustic disruptors activated. Invisible frequencies targeted the Kralzar's quantum communication network. Unlike traditional weapons, these signals were designed to confuse, to introduce mathematical contradictions into the creature's adaptive systems. Initially, nothing happened. The Kralzar continued its approach, seemingly unaffected. Military personnel exchanged nervous glances. Had Hana's strategy failed? But then, subtle changes began to appear. The creature's mechanical tentacles started to move erratically. Energy signatures fluctuated. Something was happening beneath its seemingly impenetrable exterior. Dr. Park monitored the biological readings. The quantum network is experiencing interference, she reported. Her voice was professional, but underneath, excitement bubbled. Hana's chemical agents were the next stage. Precisely engineered molecular compounds began penetrating the Kralzar's adaptive armor. Where traditional weapons had failed, these microscopic invaders found unexpected pathways. The creature began to react. Its massive form twisted, responded to the unprecedented attack. Entire sections of its biomechanical body started to destabilize. Adaptive systems that had consumed entire planetary defenses were now struggling. Electromagnetic pulse generators activated in carefully timed sequences. Each pulse was a calculated disruption, targeting specific energy points within the Kralzar's complex structure. It's working, Commander Quan said, disbelief mixing with hope in his voice. The Kralzar's movement became less precise. Mechanical tentacles that had moved with perfect coordination now jerked randomly. Energy signatures dropped and spiked. Unpredictably, Hana remained calm. Each stage of her strategy was unfolding exactly as she had calculated. This wasn't about destroying the creature. It was about introducing a fundamental breakdown in its adaptive capabilities. Colony defense systems, which moments ago seemed pathetically inadequate, now stood as potential battlegrounds. The Kralzar, for the first time, looked vulnerable. Massive energy discharges erupted from the creature's body. But these were not attacks. They were signs of internal system failure. The quantum communication network was collapsing from within. Dr. Park's screens showed extraordinary data. The Kralzar's regenerative systems were failing. Adaptive protocols were encountering mathematical impossibilities introduced by Hana's precise frequencies. Total system breakdown in progress, one of the computer interfaces announced. The creature that had consumed 12 planetary settlements was now struggling. Its massive form began to fragment. Mechanical sections separated from biological components. The perfect fusion of technology and organic matter was coming apart. Hana watched carefully. Every calculation, every prediction was being confirmed. Humanity's most powerful weapon, intelligent, precise intervention, was defeating a seemingly invincible enemy. Commander Quan approached her. "How did you know?" he asked. Hana simply smiled. Sometimes the most complex problems have the simplest solutions. The Kralzar continued to destabilize. What had seemed like an unstoppable force of destruction was now revealing its fundamental weaknesses. Mathematical contradictions introduced through precise intelligent design were winning where massive military might had failed. As the creature's form continued to break down, the colony watched in stunned silence. The impossible was happening. Humanity was not just surviving, it was proving its unexpected strength. The confrontation was not a battle of brute force, but of intelligence, and intelligence was winning. The Kralzar was falling. The silence was deafening. Where the Kralzar had once dominated the landscape, only scattered fragments remained. Mechanical pieces and biological matter lay broken across the scorched terrain, steam rising from their cooling remains. Hana stood at the observation deck, her small frame pressed against the reinforced glass. The colony behind her hummed with a strange mixture of disbelief and celebration. They had survived. More than that, they had conquered. Commander Quan approached her, his weathered hands holding a data tablet. "Your calculations were perfect," he said, a rare smile breaking through his typically stern expression. The man who had seen countless planetary losses now looked at a 12-year-old girl with something close to reverence. Dr. Park was busy collecting samples from the fallen creature. Each fragment represented a breakthrough in understanding alien biological systems. What had once seemed impossible was now becoming scientific reality. The colony's communication networks came alive. Distant human settlements began receiving the first transmissions. The Kralzar, the creature that had consumed 12 planetary systems, had been defeated by a single human colony. Hana watched the celebration around her with quiet observation. She understood something the others were just beginning to comprehend. This wasn't just a military victory. This was a triumph of human potential. Engineers worked quickly to secure the fallen technology. Every piece of the Kralzar represented a potential breakthrough. Its adaptive systems, once thought to be perfect, were now a study in vulnerability. "We'll need to analyze every fragment," Dr. Park explained to her team. "This could change everything we understand about adaptive biological systems." The colony's medical teams were already preparing reports. The quantum disruption techniques Hana had developed could potentially revolutionize medical treatments, communication technologies, and defensive strategies. Commander Quan gathered the senior staff. "We need to document everything," he announced. "Every calculation, every moment of Hana's strategy must be preserved." Outside, recovery teams began the careful process of investigating the fallen Kralzar. Massive transport vehicles moved across the landscape, collecting technological remnants that would take years to fully understand. Hana's parents watched her with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Their daughter had done what entire military systems had failed to accomplish. She had defeated a creature that had consumed entire planetary civilizations. "How did you know?" her father asked during a quiet moment. Hana's response was simple. "We're human," she said. "We adapt. We learn. We solve problems." The scientific community would later call it the most significant technological victory in human history. Researchers would spend decades studying Hana's approach, a strategy that combined quantum physics, biological understanding, and pure human creativity. News spread quickly. Other human colonies began preparing similar defensive strategies. What had seemed like a hopeless situation was now a blueprint for survival. Dr. Park approached Hana with a data tablet. "Your strategy has opened up entirely new fields of research," she explained. The older scientist looked at the young girl with genuine respect. The colony began to rebuild. But this rebuilding was different. There was a new confidence, a new understanding of human potential. They had proven that intelligence could triumph over seemingly insurmountable challenges. As night fell, Hana stood alone, watching the broken remains of the Kralzar. She understood that this was more than a battle. This was a statement about humanity's true strength. Commander Quan joined her. "What will you do next?" he asked. Hana looked up, her eyes reflecting both the destruction outside and the hope within. "We'll keep learning," she said simply. The colony around them represented more than survival. It represented human potential, the ability to face the impossible and find a way forward. The Kralzar had consumed 12 planetary systems, but here, on this single colony, humanity had found its true strength: intelligence, adaptation, creativity. These were humanity's real weapons, and they had just won their greatest victory,